Okay, welcome back to the Soggy Sleeves YouTube channel. Today I'm going to be showing you my most effective fly pattern from this last season. It's kind of just a spin-off of a leech, kind of a balanced leech. By this point, everyone and their dog has fished the classic balanced leech fly, or just a balanced fly in general, because they are so deadly effective. Traditionally, you'll see them tied like this with the offset bead attached to a pin, a dressmaker's pin, and then lashed to the shank of the hook, so the weight is counterbalanced off of the front of the fly, giving it that balanced effect. I really like tying it this way. You can see it gives you a pretty much perfect horizontal balance. When I do tie them this way, because I still do sometimes, I use a very oversized bead and I put it as close to the eye of the hook as possible for two reasons. If you have that bead offset really far to the front and then you go to recast and you have to pull your fly up through the water column, then it's going to be very difficult to bring that fly up. That fly doesn't want to, it ends up not wanting to tilt as much as you go to pull it up. So it comes up horizontally and it's kind of just a nightmare to recast. Moving that bead further back towards the eye of the hook definitely does help. But what's even better than that is tying them the way I've been doing lately. I call it my not so balanced leech, because you are completely ditching that whole pin assembly. So it's less parts, less time, so much easier to tie, so much easier to recast, and it does actually balance pretty well. The key to that is using these, they call them Insta-Jig beads. They're basically a teardrop shaped bead. It has a concave side and a convex side that's on the front there. This is an older fly that I've tied that's in the vise right now, and you can see I've put that concave side on up against the eye of the hook, so I strung that side on first. What's nice about doing it that way is it actually puts like 90% of the bulk of the bead in front of the hook eye, and that gives you basically a balanced leech. It's like, you know, a few degrees off from what the traditional pin assembly would be like. One thing I don't like about doing it this way is a lot of the bulk is actually above the hook shank, higher up from the hook shank, so you'll get the fly kind of wobbling and tilting back and forth as it tries to flip over due to that. So to mitigate that, I've just been tying them now with the other way, so with that convex side forward. You can see even this way, it still hangs at about 45 degrees. Now keep in mind, whenever you're fishing these flies, there's always going to be some sort of movement going on in the water, even still water on a glass day. No wind, no chop, you're still either going to be retrieving those flies, or there's going to be some kind of current that you can't see. Whenever there's any type of movement going on with this fly, it's going to be jigging all over the place. So it doesn't matter that it's slightly less than horizontal. And in fact, with this type of fly, as it's being moved due to the surface current or chop or whatever, without having that counterbalanced bead off of the front, this actually dips and dives and undulates way better than the traditional balanced fly. You get lots more movement out of doing it this way. The other thing that's different about this fly is that I am not using marabou like you normally would on a balanced leech. This one has a marabou tail. Marabou is really great because it gives you lots of movement. The fibers kind of breathe without having a lot of bulk. But what I don't like about marabou is the individual fibers do separate in the water. They don't kind of stick together. And whenever you're imitating leeches or bait fish, they do have a very defined profile. And they have a very solid body that sticks to that slender shape. Marabou doesn't mimic that very well, so what I've been using instead is pseudo hair. Pseudo hair is great because it kind of has, in fact, let me show you the green one that I have out of the case. It has these kind of locks of hair that stick together, and they keep that really uniform profile, and they're very flowy. All right, so before you tie this fly, make sure you have these materials available. First off, we're going to start with a good jig hook. I really like this Firehole 551. Also, the Arex 551 is a great fit. The two things you want to look for is you want to have a short shank hook with a wide gap. I like the short shank hook because then you're getting a lot of movement in the fly, whereas if you have a very long shank hook, you're not getting any undulation or movement in the part of the fly that shank takes up. So I like short shank, wide gap. Okay, so let's put that on. We got our bead with the convex side facing the eye of the hook and that concave side to the back. Thread doesn't really matter. Use whatever you're most comfortable with. Right here, I'm just matching the color of this fly. We're going to tie my green fly. I think this is A dot thread, or equivalent of like 70 denier. in light olive. Now, these do kind of have a big hole on these beads and they do like to move around. So I actually dress the hook first. Okay, that's gonna be good. Come back, whip finish it, snip my thread. I got some super glue on this whip finisher. Get that off real quick. Just a little bit. Put that in place. Okay, get my thread back on. I am actually going to come back below the bend just a little bit. Now I'm getting my pseudo hair. The way I like to do this is get a different pair of scissors from your nice tying scissors, because this synthetic material will dull your scissors pretty quickly. All this stuff down here I've trimmed off, so similar to the way you would with deer hair or elk hair, I'm just going to start teasing out little clumps with my scissors. Find a decent sized clump, maybe an 1.5 inches by 1.5 inches on this hank that this comes on. It's kind of a faux hide. Okay, that's what we're left with on the back end. There are some fibers that are a little bit too long, so again, I'll just kind of pull those out. And eventually we have our nice tail. That's going to be a good length there. Pinch that there. And then again, I need my other scissors. I'll just cut it right behind the bead. Put this over the trash again, snip it. Okay, hold that in place. You either do a pinch wrap or do a counterclockwise spin on your bobbin. That's going to make your thread jump rearward as you do this first wrap. Go down the bend of the hook just a little bit, do a couple wraps underneath to keep everything nice and gathered. And we're just going to work our way back up behind the bead here. Okay, now we just got to make a dubbing loop. Keep a little cup nearby you can dip your fingers in to moisten that tail so it stays out of the way. Okay, now you can make this dubbing body as simple or as complicated as you like. I feel like I probably make it more complicated than it needs to be, but I really like the product that it produces. So I actually mix several different products. Just your classic ice dub and olive is a great flash base. Be very sparse with this. And then I also like a little bit of bruiser blend in olive because this is very thin and flowy. And then I actually just got this cool blend from someone at the expo. It's called Peas and Carrots. It's got orange and blue in it. I also use a little bit of this too. And then I lay some of that under fur that I pulled out in there as well. Sometimes these materials are a little longer than you want. So if that's the case, what you got to do is you kind of just pull them apart with your fingers loose, lay them back over each other, grab in the middle, pull apart. This is going to get all of the fibers kind of uniform in here. See, that's about 2 inches long of fibers, and I probably want it a little less than that. So this next time when I fold it, I'm just going to grab it in the middle and break it. So now I have kind of inch-long sections that I will lay down. Okay, these are my D-loop tweezers, and you just slide these up underneath. Slide them up underneath your dubbing materials and clamp them, and they hold them all in place, and then it's easy to insert them into the dubbing loop. I do kind of taper it, so back here at the rear, what's going to be tied in first on the fly, shorter fibers, and then they kind of grow as they go up, just like if you were palmering some spay hackle or something. It can be kind of tough to slide it in this loop. You want to hold it open with your fingers pretty wide, get the materials in there, and just clamp it down. Wet this tail again if you want, because you don't want it to get caught up in this dubbing rope as you're spinning it, so kind of tip it out of the way there. spread out any clumps that are uneven in this loop. Make sure you give yourself a good little bit that's bare that you can kind of pinch while you twist. Now it's going to wrap up and cord up very nicely. Okay, then have some sort of dubbing brush to start teasing these fibers out. You basically just want to reduce all that bulk that built up in the rope and tease out those fibers so those fibers will be free to sweep backwards over the fly, and then they'll move better in the water. You don't have to go crazy with this because as you fish the fly, it will inevitably get teased out more and more beat up. Now if you have a rotary vise, you just kind of spin and preen back every now and then. If you don't, you'll be kind of passing your dubbing whirl between your fingers, which is fine. Work your way up. You want your last wrap or two to have to be packed in behind that bead pretty hard. But you don't want to have to pack it in too hard because that's just kind of a pain to deal with. Okay. Okay, did a couple behind, now a few front. Then we're just going to snip this off close. Okay, sweep all these back, finish kind of throwing some wraps in there behind the bead. Now I'm going to put a little bit of Zap-A-Gap on my actual thread wraps. Let me get these out of the way. I don't want to trap any fibers with that glue. By applying the glue to these thread wraps, you can ensure that as you wrap these thread wraps in behind the bead, that glue is going down behind the bead onto all that material. Kind of just spread that around. About an inch of thread is all that will wrap around a few times. See that glue there? Hold these fibers back and put some thread wraps over top of that glue. Then you're going to do your whip finishes right on top of that glue as well. Okay, now the last thing we got to do is kind of just brush all this mess out. Dry that tail out a little bit so you can see what it's really going to look like. Okay, so all that's brushed forward. Now I just start on this rear section. So you can see those shorter fibers in the back are doing a great job of propping up those longer fibers in the front. That orange and green and stuff from the peas and carrots makes this look really cool. That's a very common color combination you'll see in natural leeches, is the green with some orangish stuff on them. Okay, so you can see that gives it a really great teardrop shape, and that tail holds its shape really well. It doesn't spread out in the water like marabou would, and it's synthetic, so it sheds water really easily. One false cast and that will have all the water off it. These Insta-Jig beads come in a few different colors. I wish they came in more colors, but I actually use nail polish sometimes to get the colors I want, like chartreuse. But this is a really cool color with the green and black mottled. Pink's another common one. In fact, here, let me show you a few. My white and pink. I do black and pink. I do black and chartreuse. So not a whole lot to it. Very simple, way quicker to tie than your balanced leech. So give it a try. Let me know what you think. This is a great fly for Pyramid Lake because you can go as heavy or as light as you want with these beads. Any size of this bead will fit on any hook because it's got that small hole. It's not going to slide too far forward. So I'll tie them in a variety of weights. I'll tie them in a variety of sizes and colors, but mostly I stick to white, black, brown, green, gray, and tan. But the green, white, and black are really the three main ones you'll use.